before doing that, I'll also like to introduce our um, other guest, Nikhil. So, as Nikhil, you said that you've been an urban planner before, and now you've sort of transitioned to the rural development field. How has your experience been largely with the whole sector, and just personally, what do you think has been the motivation?
Yeah. Well, my answer is not going to be as spiritually inclined, I think, as Anurag says. My parents are both, they've been in the NGO or the development sector for a very long time. Uh, they own an NGO called 17,000 Foundation, which works primarily for education in rural and very remote Ladakh. And they've recently just expanded into Sikkim. So I've been around, I guess, this sector for most of my upbringing. And so I was already very what's the word, initiated kind of into it, because I've worked with them a lot in the past. I even worked on the Inception project for 17,000 feet, which was a smaller initiative called Mission Julie. So I've been around the sector a while. So, well, yeah, my education itself, urban planning, it's not really urban planning. It's more of it's an umbrella term. It's planning for urban, rural, and regional areas. So through my education itself, I was given quite a unique perspective on things where a lot of people come into the social sector to, you know, like you said, bottom up approach. I do have that extra, I guess, capability to look at it from an overall perspective. And when I graduated from college in 2019, I worked my first year. I worked with 17,000 Feet Foundation itself, and I saw a lot of these, like a lot of parallels that I think, between planning and the social sector that a lot of times overlooked because planning itself is quite a sector. And I think that's just, I mean, that's where I've been coming from.
Got it. And as a planner or an architect, what is the how is the perspective different from say somebody who's not from that background when you look at a social problem or a developmental issue? Have you thought anything around that? Did you see a significant difference?
Yeah,
I mean, when you yeah, yeah, please.
I, I have actually. So
Okay,
quite interestingly,
okay,
in the same year that I worked with 17,000 Feet Foundation, um, they'd been working in rural Ladakh for a long time. I think 7, 8 years. I think before I joined. Uh, and there was a recurring issue that we kept facing. I think when trying to implement any sort of project on ground is we couldn't understand which areas needed the most intervention, where to choose. If you get funding to digitize maybe 40 schools, which schools are you going to choose? What is your backing, or what's the science behind it? What's going to bring the most impact socially? And during that year in 17,000 feet, I developed remoteness index, something that I thought of, basically redefining the idea of what remoteness is. Where I think the conventional idea behind remoteness is, oh, it's really far away, it's really like isolated. But if you want to put that down quantitatively, how would you do that? Right? So I redefined that idea and I tried to put it down quantitatively, basically saying there are two axioms I think to remoteness. One is, how far is it from the closest urban center? How far is your town, the closest urban center, or your school, your infrastructure, whatever? And secondly, how easy is it for you to access very essential, you know, services or infrastructure like electricity or education? Where is your closest healthcare worker? Those kind of things. Uh, and so we plotted that out, and over the course of the next year, I think we added all of Ladakh onto it, basically mapping down every school, every town, every village, mapping down exactly what infrastructure they had in there. And at the end of the day, we came up with this online kind of dashboard database that you can input, say, okay, I have 40 schools, I have funding for these 40 schools. Where can I put these schools that will have the largest area of impact? Saying, okay, this there needs to be a really big school that will then serve 15 villages around it in the most impactful way. Or where do I put my digital infrastructure? So those are the kind of, I think, perspectives that I try to bring to it, because there is, of course, when you're an NGO or when you're working in the service sector, you have to be as on ground as possible. You have to be as involved with the the localities and the communities as possible, because otherwise, there's no connect and there's no assuredness that you're going to get the best of that you can do. But there also, I think, has to be that top-down approach as well, saying that okay, just because I'm working in this area doesn't mean I just go to this village because I know them the best. I need to say, okay, this village is the most need. So I think that's my perspective. And there are a couple of other things in the same vein.
Right. So what I hear you saying is that you, because you have that scientific rigor, you got that scientific rigor, and you put that data mindset into maybe prioritizing what needs to be done first, or setting the goals, writing finding the right performance indicators and so on before you finalize on a project. Is my understanding right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay. Got it. I think that's. I mean, I often have this dilemma, right? So when you go into a field, going to do some, with the objective of making a difference, making an impact, you obviously will see a lot of visuals. You obviously see reality as the first person, and then there is a strong chance that those visuals and those images can influence you, and at some point maybe cover up from the larger problem at stake. So
right,
that, I think,
right.
if you can strike a balance between having that first person experience and having that same database approach, where you're looking at, okay, these are the data sets, and these data sets is saying that XYZ problems required to be addressed in ABCD way, and add to that your own personal experience, you will have, I think, somewhat a good enough place to start off, right?
Yeah, yeah. Correct. In fact, that was my motivation behind joining the Wi-Fi fellowship, was
Okay.
basically saying I've worked on these I've worked in the sector in the past in many different avenues, but I don't if I'm coming from that top-down approach, I don't really know how much on-ground impact I'm making. Of course, there's an idea because I've been working with the sector for a while and I've worked with the companies closely, but I wanted to go do and see for myself, and I think that is something that Wi-Fi provided me helpfully.